I thought I knew my wife, but one night changed everything. I walked into our home and felt the chill of betrayal. Linda, my wife of 10 years, was dancing with a football star. It wasn't just a dance. It led to our bed. The pain was unbearable. I couldn't believe my eyes. How could she? Our special night was ruined. The love of my life had become a stranger. Revenge was the only thing on my mind. This wasn't just an affair. It was the end of trust. Watch as I unravel the truth and decide our fate. It always happens, unless you live where it doesn't get cold. Every February is tough, but that particular February was the worst of all, and the March that came after was even harder. The worst February ever began with 2 long weeks when we didn't see the sun at all. The sky was gray, it was chilly, and we had a bit of snow now and then. Everyone was really looking forward to Valentine's Day, thinking it would make everything better. That year, Valentine's Day fell on a Thursday, and so many people were taking off work the next day that some writers suggested we just close down the whole city on February 15th. Linda and I had our own plans for Valentine's Day, just like everyone else. We woke up to 2 inches of fresh snow, with more coming down fast. By the afternoon, our boss sent us home because the city was shutting down. Instead of getting ready for a fun night out, we ended up changing into our comfy sweatpants. Our big date, meant to make up for the gloomy weeks before, turned into frozen pizza and watching Frozen with the kids. The only dancing we did was helping Emma, who is 6, and Tommy, who is 4, to their beds as they complained. But there's no school tomorrow. After the kids were asleep, I sighed and handed Linda her glass of wine. "I'm sorry, Linda," I said. "This isn't how I wanted it to go." "It's okay, Jim. It wasn't your fault. It was nice to look forward to our plans. Plus, at least I got a new party dress." "I still haven't seen it." "You know the rule. You can't see it until you take me out in it." I tried to picture the dress and how she would look wearing it. Linda isn't the typical kind of beautiful, but she has a great sense of style. Everything she wears suits her and shows who she is. She started sewing her own clothes in middle school, and she still makes a lot of her outfits when she can't find what she wants in stores. She also makes many of Emma's dress-up clothes. If you saw her when she was dressed up, you would think she was the prettiest woman in the room, but it might be hard to say why. People would feel, there's something special about her. I'd like to get to know her, not I'd give anything to be with her. I felt that way when I first met her, and it hasn't changed. I looked at the ring I gave her almost 10 years ago, shining in the firelight. Thank you for saying yes, Linda. I love you. I raised my glass. To us. I love you too. To us, she replied with a smile. We enjoyed a quiet moment together. Linda, I'm sorry I've been so moody these last few days. It's not because of you or the kids, and you deserve better from me. I'm just tired of this awful February and this... I understand, Jim. I'm sorry, too. I've been a bit difficult as well. I think the bears have the right idea. We should hibernate until spring. We are all on edge, even the kids. The people I work with are much worse than you, though. What about your job? Same here. Well, look at it this way, Jim. We have each other, we have the kids, we have our home, and we know we'll have food. Yeah, like Wendy's, she laughed. Our first date is a funny memory we love to share. I met Linda in college. My parents had to stop supporting me because of my dad's medical bills, and I didn't want to borrow money, so I had no cash left after paying for school. Linda was in a better spot, and she offered to pay or split the bill, but I didn't want that. I wanted to save up and take her somewhere nice. She said I was silly, that spending time together was what mattered. So we ended up at Wendy's, and that became a special memory for us. We might be able to go to nicer places now, but we still enjoy Wendy's once in a while for old time's sake. But really, how do people get through tough times like this without love? Sometimes they can't, Linda said, shivering. A high school boyfriend of hers had taken his life on Valentine's Day a couple of years ago. Well, we do, and we will. I put down my glass and held her hands. Happy Valentine's Day, my love. Happy Valentine's Day, my dear husband. We looked into each other's eyes for a moment, then decided to move things to the bedroom. We ended up getting the long weekend that the writers thought we should have, thanks to about 2 feet of snow instead of the predicted 8 inches. Everything was closed, of course, but almost everyone kept their power. And enough people had snowmobiles that anyone who really needed to go somewhere could. The kid from up the street made a lot of noise and had fun, but he ran out of gas on Saturday afternoon and his parents wouldn't give him any more. He didn't bother anyone else after that. Our kids were thrilled. Mom and Dad were home all day, there was snow to play in, pizza to eat, and movies to watch, plus no school. What more could they want? Linda and I were happy too. There was no need to rush anywhere or do anything, and we could enjoy time with our family as much as we liked. Food wasn't a worry either. Since Linda and I grew up around here, we always made sure to have plenty stored just in case. Emma and Tommy played so much that they didn't even complain when it was time for bed. They fell asleep peacefully, which made it easy for Linda and me to enjoy some quiet time together. We usually had to wait until the kids were out of the house for that. There were just a couple of small issues that weekend. We had a huge collection of movies, but the kids only wanted to watch Frozen. They played it again and again. Sure, it's a cute story with good songs, but enough already. Also, Linda still wouldn't show me the dress she bought. If you take me out in it, it means going out, not staying in, she teased with a playful smile. What if I promise to take you out of it? Does that count? She just laughed and shook her head. Nice try, but no way. It was frustrating. The real world returned when the snowplows came through on Sunday evening. School and work were back on for Monday. Both the kids and us grown-ups sighed as we got ready. Just before bedtime, Emma and Tommy came into the living room, all clean and wearing their pajamas. Emma was the spokesperson, standing tall and straight. "Mommy, Daddy, this weekend was the best. Thanks for playing with us and watching our movie and for being together for 3 whole days. We love you." With that, Emma climbed into my lap and Tommy climbed into Linda's. They wrapped their little arms around us and gave us the sweetest hugs. Then they switched and hugged us again. I looked at Linda and saw tears in her eyes, just like mine. "We love you too," I managed to say. "We're so happy you're our kids." That night, Linda and I didn't do anything special unless you count cuddling together. We couldn't stop smiling the next morning, and the kids felt the same. But soon the winter blues came back, and the fun of the long weekend felt far away. Even our usually calm kids were arguing. After getting Emma and Tommy to bed, Linda and I flopped down on the sofa in the living room. Just then, Linda's phone rang. I groaned a little. "It's Dee. I need to take this," she said. We had a small group of 5 couples we liked to hang out with. We all got along well since we met as married couples, so there were no awkward moments about being single before. We all believed in being faithful, which made it easy for us to dance with each other's partners when we went out. As Linda talked with Dee, I could see her getting more excited. After she finished the call, she jumped into my lap. "What was that about?" I asked, smiling back at her. "Well, dear husband," she grinned, "I know this awful February feels like it's dragging on." "I could not agree more," I said, reaching for my glass of wine. Linda stopped me and pulled my hand to her waist instead. "Better choice. We've been complaining about how this February is the worst, plus we have an extra day of it." "Okay, but why do you look so happy?" I asked. "That's because Dee suggested something fun. The extra day is a Friday. She thought we could all get together, find sitters for the kids, enjoy a nice dinner, go dancing at a great club, and book hotel rooms for the night. We could have a little fun without worrying about how to get home and end this horrible month with a bang." "But how do we get from the club back to the hotel? Won't we need to drive?" I had to ask the realistic questions. It's just my nature. "That's the best part. You remember the Madison uptown? We've eaten there before. There's a dance club nearby where some of Dave's co-workers go. They'll have a live band on Friday night, and if we eat at the Madison, we don't have to pay to get in. Oh, and Phil and Jane already asked Mrs. Porter to watch their kids overnight, and she said she could take ours too." I'll have to think about this," I said, hoping Linda would use her charm to convince me. Instead, she grabbed a throw pillow and hit me with it. "Ow. Okay, I've thought about it. Let's do it, but only if you agree to one thing." "What's that?" Linda looked at me curiously. I held her face in my hands and looked into her blue eyes. "You wear the dress you bought for Valentine's Day, the one I still haven't seen." "Your wish is my command." Her voice was low and her eyes sparkled with mischief. I couldn't say no. It was a stunning blue dress. I couldn't describe the exact shade. All I can say is that it made her blue eyes shine. It had long sleeves and a high neck, but it was definitely not boring. The skirt flared out and moved beautifully as she walked, catching everyone's attention. When she danced, it was like the dress had a mind of its own, moving just right. The soft fabric hugged her figure perfectly, showing off her slim shape beneath. Linda smiled as she walked down the stairs toward me, and I just stood there, amazed. "Dear Jim," she said softly. She gently touched my chin, closing my mouth. I swallowed hard, but still couldn't find the words. "It's still me, the same Linda as always. You don't have to say nice things, even if I like it when you do." I shook my head and finally spoke. "You don't get it. You look so amazing. I lost my words again. I took her hands in mine, kissed them gently, and looked up at her. Her eyes were shiny, and her smile trembled a bit. I nodded, and she understood. The 10 of us met at the restaurant. It was busy on a Friday night, but we had a big table reserved so we could all sit together. We laughed, talked, and enjoyed a great meal, happy to be with each other and glad that February was ending. Linda was the prettiest woman in the place, and I told her so many times. I found reasons to touch her arm or hand, and she smiled back at me. This was a night to remember. After we ate, we went to our rooms before going to the club. Neither Linda nor I drink much, so I usually drive. I was happy I didn't have to do that tonight. I cared about my friend's safety, but I really wanted to spend time with Linda alone. She must have felt the same, because she went to our room for a few minutes and came back with a playful smile. "We don't have to stay at the club long, do we?" she whispered as we walked. I knew she loved dancing with our friends, but it sounded like she wanted some quiet time, too. I grinned. "It's up to you, babe." She playfully punched my arm and then held on to it. We had a table for 10 at the club, which was smart because it was packed. It seemed like everyone was out celebrating, and they noticed the 5 women in our group. "You're getting a lot of attention, babe," I whispered to Linda. "As usual, you're the prettiest woman in the room." "Oh, come on." She looked up at me, leaning closer. "You don't need to say that, even though I like it." "But I have to," I replied. "It's the truth. You can't argue with the truth." I knew my logic was a bit silly, but we didn't care. She got the message and glowed even more. Neither of us is a great dancer, but we didn't mind. We were there to enjoy each other, not to entertain anyone. I danced with Linda, taking breaks for hot wings and drinks. I went to get more wings and saw Dave asking Linda to dance when I returned. I heard her answer. "I'd love to, Dave, but I want to make tonight special for Jim. I'm only dancing with him tonight." Was I proud? Absolutely. I passed the wings to Linda and whispered, "So, is it time to leave yet? Right after you brought more wings? What are you thinking? We'll need our energy for later." She gave me that playful look again and held my hand under the table. A few minutes later, the band stopped playing. It got quieter, and we heard laughter from another table. "Hey, isn't that Mark Lavaliere?" Phil said, leaning around me to see. "It is," Dee squealed. Mark Lavaliere was a star player on our city's football team. He lived here year-round and was known for being a good person who cared about the community. The guys at our table talked about his football skills, while the women praised his kind heart. "It doesn't hurt that he's cute," Dee added. Linda and I knew who he was, but we were more interested in each other. We just held hands under the table. "Hey, you two, get a room," someone joked. Linda and I looked at each other. We weren't even kissing, just sharing wings. Anyway, we had a room already. Luckily, the band started playing again, so we didn't feel embarrassed. "Shall we dance here or upstairs?" I asked Linda. Before she could answer, Jane shouted, "Look! He's coming over here!" Mark was walking toward us. The women at the table straightened up and put on their best looks, all wanting his attention. Linda looked down and held my hand tighter. "Hi, I'm Mark. Would you like to dance?" he asked Linda. I couldn't believe it when Linda gasped, quickly dropping my hand as if it burned her. She turned away from me, took Mark's hand, and got up from her chair. "Hey, man, now you've hurt my feelings," Dave teased. "Yeah, I thought she was dancing with me tonight," I grumbled. "Relax, Jim. It's just a dance," Jane said, trying to calm me down. I wanted to trust her, but deep down I felt uneasy. The band played some upbeat songs, and everyone at our table watched them dance, just like everyone else in the room. Mark was a great dancer, Much better than me, and Linda was clearly having a good time. She looked fantastic in her dress, and it highlighted her perfectly. "Don't they look amazing together? Come on, Jim, let's join them," Dee said, trying to lift my spirits. "Thanks, but I'll pass." Then the music slowed down. I watched as Linda melted into Mark's arms, fitting perfectly with him. He seemed skilled at dancing with her. I thought sourly that he must have had lots of practice. Mark said something to Linda, and she smiled back at him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He kept his distance, just like I did with Dee or Jane. Another slow song started, a soft ballad. I saw the bandleader looking at Linda and Mark, following their lead. Mark was beaming as he held Linda. He seemed very happy. I had seen enough. I stood up and Jane reached for my arm. "Wait, Jim. Let her enjoy this. Don't ruin it for her." I pulled my arm away and looked at Linda. She clearly wanted to be with Mark. She didn't want me to interrupt her. I sank back into my chair. Finally, the song ended. Mark nodded at the bandleader, and they started a fast song. He and Linda left the dance floor, smiling at each other but not touching. Linda shot him one last big smile as she turned toward our table. The difference between a woman's best smile and her second-best smile is small. If you don't know her well, you might not even see it. As Linda came closer and our eyes met, her best smile faded. I realized then that we had a problem. "I keep telling you that you're the prettiest woman here," I whispered in her ear as I helped her sit down. I took her hand and held it with both of mine. "Shall we take the next dance back to our room?" For a brief moment, I thought I saw fear in Linda's eyes. They widened, and I felt her hand shake, but she quickly looked away across the table. "I'm sorry, everyone. I need to go to the restroom right now. Linda, come with me," Dee announced loudly. I was too distracted to wonder why she said that so everyone could hear. Linda glanced at me, looking sorry. "Sorry, Jim, I need to freshen up too." She stood up and left without answering me. Everyone quickly started joking about why women can't go to the restroom alone. I was just starting to think it was odd how my friends were pushing that topic when Dee came back. "Alone? Where's Linda? Is she okay?" I asked, nearly shouting. "Relax, Jim," Dee said with a smile. "Linda's fine. She just needed to do something. Don't worry about her. She's a grown woman." My friends started teasing me about how much I worried about Linda. It was true. We worried about each other like that. I tolerated it for about 5 minutes, but when Linda still hadn't returned, I had enough. I got up and walked to the bar, taking an empty plate with me as a reason. I approached one of the women working behind the bar. "Excuse me, but my wife went to the restroom about 15 minutes ago and hasn't come out. She never takes this long. Can you please check on her?" The bartender looked at me skeptically. The plate in my hand gave me an idea. The wings are delicious, and she likes spicy food. Sometimes she has a reaction to it. I just want to know she's okay. Her name is Linda. Let me show you a picture of her. I set the plate down and pulled up a photo of Linda on my phone. The bartender seemed to soften when a voice came from beside me. "She's fine. You don't need to check on her." Dee was speaking to the bartender. "Everything's okay. I'll handle this." She slid a $5 bill across the counter. I wondered why the bartender looked at me with sympathy as she took the money. "What? Why? But she went with you? Because you asked her?" I was totally confused. "Jim, she's not in the restroom. She has left the club." "Left? Without me? Why? What happened? Why didn't she say anything? Is she okay?" I still didn't understand. "Let's move to a quieter spot," Dee said. I followed her to the end of the bar. It was darker and quieter there. Dee looked me in the eye. "Jim, Linda loves you. She loves you and the kids more than anything else in the world, and that will never change. But she's spending tonight with Mark." I stood there, shocked and speechless, as my world fell apart. Thoughts raced through my mind. Linda in her gorgeous blue dress, at dinner, at the club, and then with Mark. My anger began to rise. So on what was supposed to be our special night, she chose to leave me for some jerk. I glared at Dee as I spoke. "Jim, she hasn't left you. She'll come home to you tomorrow and you'll have many more special times together." She didn't even have the courage to tell me she was leaving. She just snuck out. "Jim, listen to me. She hasn't left you." "Then where is she?" "She isn't here with me right now, is she?" I raised my voice and didn't care who was listening. please calm down. People are watching you. I know this hurts, but it's only for tonight. Linda knows it. We all know it. You're the only man for her. You always will be. You're the nice guy. Yeah, and we all know where the nice guy ends up, don't we? Jim, it's not like that. You're making too much of this. It's just tonight. Tomorrow she'll be back with you and things will be the same as before. I let out a scoff. If she really thought that, I knew there was nothing I could say to change her mind. So what was your part in this? You didn't really need to go to the bathroom, did you? My wife signaled you, right? She asked you to keep me away long enough for her and that jerk to slip away? Yes, she asked me to do that. She didn't want you to embarrass yourself while Mark was here. She also asked me to remind you that she loves you and will always come back to you. Yeah, I'd remember her love tonight, for a long time to come. More like she didn't want me to embarrass her while she walked away from her husband to spend the night with a jerk. Did it ever cross your mind to remind her she has a husband and a marriage? She could lose both over this. Dee looked straight at me. No, it didn't cross my mind because I know she won't lose you. You're too good of a man for that. I told her how lucky she is. She's lucky that the man every woman in this room wanted chose her. But she's even luckier to have a husband who loves her enough to keep going despite the hurt. You know she'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. What if she can't make it up to me? What if there's no way to fix this? Jim, I know how much you love Linda and how much she loves you. This doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just one night compared to all the years and all the love you two share. It isn't a big deal unless you make it one. I believe she'll come back to you and you'll be okay. Dee spoke softly but firmly. I wanted to shake her for saying such silly things. She must live in a different world. So if that jerk had picked you like you wanted, you'd do the same thing? I would. She shot her answer back at me. Does Dave know that? No, and he doesn't need to. I don't think it will ever happen, she said quietly. Maybe I should tell him. Jim, please don't think like that. I know you're upset, but that won't help. Just come back to the table with us. Let's take your mind off it for a while. You haven't danced with me all night, she said, smiling at me. I wanted to dance with my wife, but thanks to you, her, and that jerk, I can't do that now. I turned away from Dee and headed back to our table. As I returned, the chatter at the table stopped. Everyone's eyes were turned away. My friends now knew that my wife was with that jerk at that very moment. Jim, are you going to be okay? Dave asked cautiously after he took Dee's seat. I wanted to tell him what Dee said and ask if he would be okay, but I couldn't force the words out. I guess I hadn't completely moved past being the nice guy yet. It depends on what you mean by okay. A few nervous laughs followed. I mean, that was a horrible thing for her to do, but you two will be okay, right? You're not going to divorce Linda over this, are you? I don't see why I shouldn't, I replied coldly. Gasps filled the table. Why does everyone look so shocked? I continued. We all know how we feel about cheating. Once it happens, that's it. We said that years ago. But Jim, it's Mark Lavaliere. Dee tried to interject. So what? I don't care who it is. If it isn't me, that's enough. Jim, think about your kids. We all know how much you love them and how much they need you. Think of them before you do anything, Jane said. Her kids were about the same age as mine and were best friends. You mean like how my wife is thinking about them right now? Well, you got a babysitter so you wouldn't have to think about them tonight. I think Dee meant it to be funny, but it fell flat. Come on, Jim, it's just one night. It's a chance she won't get again. You wouldn't divorce Linda over one night. Why not? I glared at her. Silence filled the room. Jim, try to see it this way. Maybe it will help, Jane said, attempting to sound caring. What if a model from a famous magazine was here? Imagine if she picked you to dance with and then offered to spend the night with you. Would you really say no? The pleading look in Jane's warm brown eyes usually got her what she wanted, but not tonight. I stood and looked down at Jane. Yes, I would be tempted, but I would say no. I have a wife and I don't want to hurt her. At least that's what I would have done before tonight. Another heavy silence hung in the air. I looked around the table at my so-called friends, who all seemed to side with my cheating wife. At that moment, I hoped I would never see any of them again. I pulled out a 20 and tossed it on the table. That will cover my bill. Since you're all helping the girl I came with, you might as well pay her bill, too. With that, I turned and walked out of the club. As I walked a block and a half to my hotel, my anger faded. It was replaced by a deep sadness. Linda and I were supposed to be walking together, holding hands and joking with our friends about what they would do in their hotel rooms. She should have been by my side, leaning into me when the talk got too wild. Instead, I was alone. Alone, I rode the elevator trying not to think about the fun Linda and I had in other hotel elevators. Alone, I entered what should have been our room. Alone, I faced the mess of what was supposed to be our special night. I turned on the light and closed the door behind me. I felt tired in a way I couldn't explain. I dropped my winter coat on the floor and walked toward the bedroom. Each pillow had a Godiva chocolate on it. There was a dark blue bra and panties set on the bed that I didn't recognize. They were darker than her dress and had black lace on them. In my mind, I could picture her wearing them, looking at me with love and playfulness. That look had been only for me until tonight. I picked up the delicate items gently, hoping holding them would make her come back to me. It didn't work. I cried. My wife, my partner, my best friend was taken from me by another man. He had easily taken her from right next to me, as if it was his right to do so. He didn't care what she meant to me. All he saw was a pretty woman for the night. And she had let him. I must not have mattered to her enough to resist. It felt like she thought he had more right to her than I did, even after nearly 10 years as a loving husband. Yes, it was supposed to be just one night. But what would he leave behind in her heart and mind? What could I do that would ever compare to the city hero, the handsome man, Mark the Jerk Lavalier? I must have dozed off. When I woke up, it was almost 1 o'clock. I was slumped over on the bed, my back hurt, and the wet bra and panty were still in my hands. I looked around the room. Remembering what we had planned for this room, I knew I couldn't stay there. Home in our bed? No, that would be worse. Another hotel? That seemed silly. I had already paid for this one. Maybe one of the kids' rooms? That could work. I put together Linda's suitcase and my own. I ate both chocolates. No point in wasting them. I tossed the wet bra and panty in the trash. They were just as empty as our special night. I checked out of the hotel. She and the jerk could figure out how she would get home. She probably wouldn't even come back by checkout time. The young woman behind the desk looked concerned when she asked if the room hadn't been to our liking. I stared at her, trying to understand her question. Couples who rented a room like that usually didn't leave until the last minute. No, the room was fine. Things have just changed. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, quickly going back to her cheerful work once she knew the hotel was not to blame. She had probably seen this before, and it didn't seem to bother her much. Our little home didn't have a spare room or even a couch big enough to lie down on. So, it was Tommy's room. I surprised myself by sleeping well and without dreams. I still don't know how that happened, but it was a blessing. I sat on Tommy's bed and thought about what I needed to do. I had no idea when my unfaithful wife would come home. She was obviously too busy with the jerk to text or call. I figured she wouldn't show up until noon, which gave me time to pack for a week and be gone before she arrived. On Monday, I would find a lawyer and start the divorce process. My old friends, along with my soon-to-be ex-wife, seemed to think the usual idea that cheating is a one-time thing didn't apply here. They were wrong. It didn't matter who she was with, it wasn't me, and that was that. They would just have to accept their disappointment. I made myself breakfast. A man facing the end eats a big breakfast, I told myself. While I was cleaning my dishes, my eyes went to the fridge. Tommy's crayon drawing of our family was done in his 4-year-old style. He had carefully colored everyone's hair and eyes right, even his sister's. The drawing showed the love and happiness he felt. What would happen to him if I let his mother and the jerk break up our family? And what about my daughter, Emma? I knew that Emma and Tommy weren't in Linda's thoughts at that moment. I wasn't either, and she deserved to lose us both. But if I wanted to give her what she deserved, I would ruin my kids' lives. Could I do that? And if I couldn't, then what? I didn't know. So I unpacked our suitcases and did some chores that needed little thought. After noon, I took a break and slumped into my chair in the living room. I didn't turn on any lights. The gray day matched my mood as I tried to think of a way to end my broken marriage without hurting my children. After a while, I lost track of time. Then I heard a car in the driveway and a key in the lock. I thought I should be curious enough to look out the window. Did that guy take her home himself? Did he send a fancy car? I just didn't care enough to stand up from my chair. Jim, I'm home. Her voice was the same as it always was after she went out. She closed the door and turned on a light. I looked over at her. She looked just like she always did. The blue dress was just as nice as it had been the night before. Her dark hair hung down the same way, and her face, her posture, even the rings on her fingers looked the same. It was like nothing had changed, as if she hadn't spent the whole night and morning lying to me with someone else. I thought there should be some kind of sign that she had done something wrong, or at least some shame on her face, but there was none. "It's still just me, the same old me," she said, smiling kindly. She must have known what I was thinking. "Nothing is different. My love for you is the same as it was yesterday. If that's true, then I guess we never had what I thought we did." Linda's smile faded. "Jim, honey, go upstairs, take a shower, and change your clothes. I put your things away. I showered before I came home. You know I would never take another one." My voice was deeper than she had ever heard. She rushed upstairs without saying another word. I thought I had calmed down enough, but I was wrong. I tried to get a grip on my anger while she was in the shower so we could talk about the next steps. I owed it to our kids. She came back down dressed in sweatpants and a worried look on her face. "Thanks for putting my things away, Jim. But where's the lingerie I left on the bed in the hotel? I threw it out, just like you did with our special night. Jim, I bought them to share with you. I was hoping to make up for... I got that hotel room just for us, and we know how that went, don't we?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. I struggled to keep calm again. "Did you enjoy it?" That question was heavy in the air. Finally, Linda looked back at me, concern on her face. "Jim, I know you have questions. I know we need to talk, and I will answer honestly. But are you sure you want to know that? I don't want to hurt you." "It's a little late to think about not hurting me, isn't it?" Linda flinched. "I know, but I'm afraid that telling you what happened will hurt you more, and that will make it harder for us to move forward. Can we focus on the future? One night shouldn't ruin everything." "That's something you should have thought about last night," I replied, pointing to a small crystal vase that Linda loved, which always sat on our mantelpiece. "How many times would I have to throw that vase against the fireplace for it to break? Even if you fixed it, it would never be the same, right? Jim, I love that vase, but I could live without it. Our marriage, what we've built together for almost 10 years, is much stronger and more beautiful than that vase. Our love can survive hard times. That I can't lose. I know you're hurting and I want to make it up to you. But I believe you can forgive me, and we'll be okay. Until last night, I thought you loved me enough to never betray me. I guess we were both wrong." Linda slumped back into her chair. "So, was the night and morning with that guy what you expected? Mark isn't a bad person. He's a good man. You would like him if things were different. He is a bad person. Any man who approaches a woman who is with someone else, not caring if she's married, and takes her away is a bad person. Jim, Mark didn't take me away from you. He couldn't. If he didn't take you away, where were you last night? Okay, he took me away for the night, but I'm here with you now, and I'll stay with you for the rest of my life." "Right. You're here with me now because that guy got what he wanted and now he's done with you." "No, you're wrong. I'm here because I love you, because I'm your wife, and this is our home." "Sure. So if that guy had asked you to stay with him this afternoon, where would you be right now?" Linda at least looked embarrassed. "Okay, you have a point. But Mark was kind to me, and I wish you wouldn't call him that." "Well, my wishes didn't matter much since that guy walked up to you last night, did they? So why should yours matter to me?" I stood up, my words sharp. She flinched, scared. I slumped back down, trying to calm myself. "Let's try again. Was it everything you expected?" "Everything and more." She looked directly at me, her eyes showing both sympathy and determination. Well, I asked for that, didn't I? At least she seemed serious about being honest. I sighed, knowing I needed to find out how deep the damage was. "How did it start?" I asked. Linda thought for a moment. "I was surprised when Mark asked me to dance. I never meant to get his attention. I thought he would ask someone else. But then he asked me, and I noticed Dee looking at me with jealousy. I realized I might never get another chance to say I danced with Mark Lavaliere, so I took his hand. I was too nervous to speak. I didn't even tell him my name until we were on the dance floor and he asked for it. I had promised I would only dance with you, but I thought just a couple of dances with him would be okay. Then I'd come back to you and you would understand. I like dancing with Mark. He's a really good dancer, as I'm sure you saw. He's thinking about teaching ballroom dancing after he finishes football. His knees have to hold up, though. I think he would be great at it. After the second fast dance, I thought we were done. Just as I was about to thank him, the band started a slow song, and he wrapped his arms around me. It sounds silly, but in that moment I forgot everything else. He didn't say anything, but I knew he wanted more than just a dance. Suddenly I knew I would give it to him without even thinking about it. During the second slow dance, he asked if I was ready. I didn't need him to explain, I just nodded. I was too stunned to speak. There's a back door by the restrooms. Just say you have to go and I'll meet you there. I appreciated that he didn't come to our table and show off. Then he went back to his table and you took my hand, noticing how jumpy I was. I did notice. Like a fool, I thought after you danced with him that you wanted to be with me. It didn't cross my mind that you couldn't wait to leave. I keep saying I wasn't leaving you. It was just like running errands or going to work. I would come back as always. Really? So you think running off for a night with asshole is just like going to the grocery store? Well, not exactly, but it didn't feel like I was really leaving you. It sure felt like leaving. She flinched as if I had hit her. I struggled to keep calm. If I had cut in, would you have stayed with me? Linda looked straight into my eyes. No. I guess I deserved that answer. I had to look away. I mean that little to you then? No, Jim. Don't ever think that. You mean everything to me. That's not true, Linda. What you do shows how you really feel. From the moment asshole talked to you until now, your actions say I mean nothing to you. I glanced at the clock. It's time to pick up the kids. I'll bring them home, help settle them in, and then I'm going out. I need some space from all of this. Jim, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't do anything that will make things harder for us. Right. You've already messed that up. Please, Jim. Think of Emma and Tommy. Think about how this could affect them. I snapped at her. Like you were thinking last night about what you did to them? No. You can't use them as an excuse. Linda looked shocked. I want you to write down what happened last night and this morning. I know asshole was with you. You don't need to write all the details. I need to know what you were thinking and feeling, but I can't be in the same room while you tell me. Right now, I can barely stand to look at you, but I still need to know what happened. Maybe it would hurt less if I can read it instead of hearing your voice. I'll do whatever you want, Jim. But how can I fix things with you if you aren't here? I had plans for us tonight, she said with a small smile. Not until you show me a clean STD test from your doctor. Oh, Linda turned red. Do you have to embarrass me like that? Mark is an athlete. He must be clean. Of course, he would say that if you'd thought to ask. But you didn't, did you? I grabbed my coat and walked to the door. She had just admitted that she allowed asshole to be with her without thinking about the risks. Amazing. I love you, Jim. Right now, I have no idea what that means coming from you. As soon as I stepped into Mrs. Porter's living room, Emma and Tommy rushed toward me. I knelt and picked them up, both shouting, "Daddy!" in my ears. They wouldn't let me set them down as I took their backpacks. Mrs. Porter waved goodbye as I carried them out. They babbled non-stop during the ride home, sharing everything that had happened. They fought over who got to talk first because they both thought their sibling was wrong. It was loud and chaotic, but that's exactly what I needed right then. When we got home, they had to tell Linda everything again, which gave me time to unpack their bags and pack mine. They finally calmed down, we had dinner, and then read together, just like we always did. That was good family time. Then it was bedtime. I kissed them goodnight, and those kisses were a promise. No matter what Linda did, I would always take care of my kids. I've been thinking about what you asked, Jim. Are you really sure you want this in writing? Do you want to go back to this later and feel sad again? I never wanted any of this to happen, but you did it anyway. What I want doesn't seem to matter to you anymore. I know reading it will hurt, but I need to figure this out if I want to make the right choices in the future. So no, I don't really want to read it, but I have to. Linda reached out to touch my neck the way she always did when I was stressed. I took a step back from her, and her hand fell to her side. Her face looked pale. I get it. It will be hard, but I'll do what you ask. I'll mark the parts that might hurt the most so you can skip them if you want." She was trying to help, just like she always did when I was stressed. But it didn't help much when she was the cause of my stress. I nodded and grabbed my overnight bag. "I'll see you tomorrow after dinner." "I love you, Jim." You know, I used to believe that. There was a small bar a few blocks from my office called The Willing Mind. It looked like a pub from a long time ago with a kind of worn-out feel to it. It was in a part of town where the troublemakers didn't go. I sometimes went there to relax. I had a couple of beers and tried to think over the next few hours. At least that's what I told myself, but I can't remember a single thought I had. I just sat there and felt hurt until they closed. I spent the night in my office. Why not? It was nearby, it was free, and I knew no one would bother me. I wasn't going to sleep much anyway. The next morning I brought in some breakfast and actually did some thinking. I needed to sort things out, for Emma and Tommy's sake as much as for my own. The future I had hoped for with the woman I loved felt shattered. What did I want now? I had to find out and make it happen on my own because what I wanted clearly didn't matter to Linda. The kids came first. That was clear. They deserved a safe home where they could grow and thrive. I wouldn't settle for anything less from myself or Linda. That was essential. What about Linda? She seemed to think that once I got over my pain, we would be back to how we were before. That wouldn't happen. I knew I would feel better with time, but that wouldn't change the real problems. The memory of her betrayal would stay with me forever, and no matter what she said, we wouldn't be the same again. Were Linda and I done then? I didn't see another way. What would that mean for Emma and Tommy? The idea of them moving back and forth between us filled me with dread. Kids often try to play one parent off against the other, and that's never good for them. If Linda and I divorced, it would make that too easy. Emma already had me wrapped around her finger. I'd be a total pushover by the time she was a teenager. Linda would be the same with Tommy. That playful look and sweet smile already made her give in more than she should. No, we both needed to work together to raise them. I had to find a way to make that happen. But how? I was glad I had the idea to have Linda write things down. I could go back and read parts that confused me, and if I got too upset, I could take a break and come back later. I knew I didn't think clearly when I was angry or sad. I was surprised to see that I was grieving. Something important to me, the promise from almost 10 years ago, was gone. Linda was supposed to be mine alone, and I thought I would always be first in her heart. I believed she would never hurt me on purpose. All that was lost. Did she miss it too? She had no problem giving it all away. Did she wish she hadn't? I went home Sunday evening to the usual loud welcome from my kids. The thought of letting them down nearly broke my heart. So when Linda smiled at me and hugged me, I accepted it. "What did you tell them about where I was?" I whispered to her. "What does that matter?" I felt her tense up. "So we are on the same page." She relaxed. "I said you were at your office." I chuckled. "What's so funny about that?" "That's where I was." "Oh." She pulled back and smiled at me. Our eyes met. I smiled sadly and shrugged. She really did know me well. Then why did she— Never mind. Linda's first question after the kids were in bed surprised me, though it shouldn't have. "Jim, where are we sleeping tonight? I really want to be close tonight, but I understand why we can't. I could sleep somewhere else, but I don't think the couch will work, and the air mattress isn't fixed." "You're right, and Emma's bed is too small. If either she or Tommy wakes up at night, we both need to be where they think we should be. I think we should sleep in our bed, but if there's even a hint of anything romantic, you'll have to sleep on the floor." "I understand," Linda said with a sad tone. She sighed and pulled out some handwritten papers from the table drawer. "I spent a lot of time on this. I think one reason you left was to give me time to think without you around. That was smart, and I appreciate it. You know me well, even if you don't think so right now. I've tried to think of the questions you might have and the things that trouble you, and I've answered them as honestly as I can. I know this will be hard for you to read, and I cried while I wrote it. This was really tough. I could have made it easier by not telling you the truth or by hiding things, but you're right. We need to be honest with each other. I promise that everything I've written and everything I will say to you is the truth, no matter how it makes me look. I won't lie to you, ever." She carefully placed the papers into my hands. "Good night, Jim. I love you." She kissed the top of my head and left. I looked at the papers I was holding. I always liked Linda's handwriting. It was pretty, but not too fancy or childish. It flowed well and was easy to read. Her handwriting felt like her, just like the way she dressed and carried herself. She knew I loved it, which is why she wrote it by hand instead of typing. I sighed and started to read. Dear Jim, yesterday afternoon, when you left, you said you didn't understand what I meant when I told you I love you. I was shocked. I couldn't believe you felt that way after all the love we've shared. I think you believed that if I loved you the way you thought, I wouldn't have done what I did Friday night. I would agree with you on that. Just a few minutes before Mark came to our table, if you had asked me if I could cheat on you, I would have laughed and said no way. But then it happened. My love for you hasn't changed. I promise it hasn't. I want to explain how I can say that after what happened. First, please know I didn't do this to hurt you, but I know it did, and I didn't do it to get back at you for anything. You've asked me to be honest, and that's what I'll do, even if it hurts. I need you to know how I felt in Mark's arms. I was very aware of how big and strong he was. It made me feel small and weak, but he never forced me to do anything. I felt so overwhelmed. It was as if I lost myself in him. I didn't feel like I had choices. It felt like everything was already decided. I felt that the moment he took me in his arms for the first slow dance. In that moment, I belonged to him, and we both knew it. I didn't choose it. I just was. Did I like that feeling? At that moment, yes. How do I feel about it now? I don't like thinking that I gave up control of myself like that to someone who didn't care about me. I didn't try to stop it. I just went along with it and enjoyed it. Would it have felt the same with any other big, strong man who wasn't Mark Lavaliere? I don't think so. You know, Paul is big and strong, and sometimes he can be very confident, but dancing with him never felt like this. So I guess it was just Mark. When I asked Dee to take me to the restroom, she already knew what was going on. She told me that Mark wanted the only pretty girl in the room who wasn't after him. I think she was a bit jealous. Then she said I was lucky and would make sure you didn't find out right away so I could get away. She reminded me how much I loved you and told me to have fun and share all the details. Then I left, and Mark was there with my coat. I don't know how he got it without the ticket. I guess it helps to be famous. When he touched my shoulders after helping me into my coat, I felt the same way as when he held me on the dance floor. He drove me to his house, took my coat, and played some soft music. We danced for a while in his living room. I don't know why he did that. Maybe he wanted to show he could be a gentleman by not rushing me. I appreciated it and told him so. We kissed while we danced. He was in full control, just like during that first dance at the club. After we danced for a while, Mark picked me up in his arms and carried me to his bedroom. He laid me down gently. He slowly took off my clothes, almost as if he was worshiping me. Once I was down to my underwear, I felt more excited than I ever have. I don't know how long we were together, but it felt like forever. And forgive me, Jim, but forever was exactly what I wanted. After we cleaned up, I thought for a moment about texting you to say I was safe and tell you I loved you, but I was just too tired. All I could think about was sleeping. When I woke up in Mark's arms, I still felt that same overwhelmed feeling from the club and during our time together. He woke up and we were together again. Then he made breakfast for me. It wasn't as good as when you cook, but I was so tired I would have eaten anything. At least he didn't make hash browns. Then we were together one more time, slowly and gently. I showered again, dressed, and he drove me home. When I got into his car, I felt like I could make choices again, as if he had set me free. I know that sounds funny, but that's how it felt. I think you were right. He got what he wanted and didn't want me anymore, and I felt that. So I started to think about you and how hurt you must be. I know we have a hard time ahead, but I truly believe our marriage is not in danger. Our love is strong. We are perfect for each other. Mark parked in our driveway and said, "Thanks for a wonderful evening and morning." He gave me a hug and a light kiss. He stayed there until I opened the front door, just like he always did when we dated. I guess he does that for all his dates, but it was still kind of him. I smiled and waved, and he smiled and waved back. That was it. I walked inside, eager to show you how much I love you and want to spend my life with you. I feel the same way now as I write this. I don't think Mark thought he was doing anything wrong. I believe he thought he had a right to me, just like any man may feel. He chose me, and that was that. He wouldn't have forced me to stay. If I had said no, I think he would have moved on to someone else. He was sure I wouldn't refuse him, and he was right. You should know that Mark was kind and caring to me. He treated me well. He acted like a gentleman, holding doors for me and everything. He even surprised me by remembering my name the next morning. I know it wasn't just about me. He would treat any woman the same way. Still, I can't help but think well of him for that. This part is hard to write, Jim. I'm crying as I think about how you will feel when you read this. I've borrowed a couple of your handkerchiefs from your dresser, and they'll be ruined when I'm done. I promised to buy you new ones this week. I wouldn't write or say this unless you told me to. Mark is good at being intimate. He's had a lot of experience with women. He knows how to make a woman feel good in ways she might not even know. He was gentle when he needed to be and strong when he wanted to be. Even when he was being strong, it felt right. It was as if I was his instrument and he knew how to play it perfectly. I've heard people say intimacy is like a man owning a woman. I never understood that until now. You treat me as an equal. If there is any ownership, it's shared. We belong to each other. But with Mark, it felt different. From the moment he held me on the dance floor to when he put me in his car, it didn't feel like we shared anything. I gave him all of my attention. I can't even remember how many times I felt happy. It all blended together. From the moment he took me in his arms, he filled my mind completely. There was no room for anything else, not even thinking about you or our kids. This is the hardest part. I'm crying as I write this, but you wanted me to tell you. I'm sorry, Jim, but it will hurt. Mark is very skilled. With all his experience, he should be. If not, he would be foolish, and he isn't that. It was the best experience I've ever had, better than I ever imagined. He knows what he's doing, and that shows in how he was with me. I mean it when I say it was like a performance, and it wasn't just for me. You may never experience what he has, thank goodness. But you've grown so much during our time together, just as I have. You want to learn because you love me. That means more to me than great experiences. That's the hardest thing to say. I hope it gets easier from here. Your second handkerchief is almost soaked. Mark wanted to impress me, and he did, but I was just another woman to him. He would treat any woman the same way. It's part of who he is, not who she is. For something so personal, it felt almost casual. One more thing you need to know. If Mark asked me to leave you and marry him, I would say no. This wouldn't change even if we didn't have Emma and Tommy. If I were single and both of you asked me to marry you, I would choose you without thinking. I wouldn't have any regrets. He may be a hero to many, but you are my hero. How can I say you're my hero when I've told you I had better moments with Mark? Neither of us believes in just intimacy. I don't think that was true for Mark either. If it was, it wouldn't have been so good. That's how we spent most of our time. But what we have is more important than anything I did with Mark. If I had to choose between what we share and a lifetime with Mark, I would be making a terrible choice. I don't love Mark, not even close. I appreciate him and enjoyed my time with him, but that's all. It's over, and I'm ready to focus on what matters to me. Coming back to you, where my heart has been for the last 10 years. This brings me back to the beginning of my letter. How could I do this when I love you so much? Why didn't my love for you stop me? I don't fully understand, but here's my thought. When I danced with Mark, I thought it would just be a couple of dances. Our friends would tease, and that would be the end. The man every woman at our table wanted to dance with me, so I did. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. If you had done that on our first date, would we have gone on a second one? But Jim, it was Mark. What does that matter? No matter who he was, you picked him instead of me. On a first date? Okay, that's your choice. Have a nice life and don't let the door hit you as you leave. I won't think well of you. I won't call you again, but I'll get over it. But after almost 10 years of being married, how do I move on from that? Jim, I'm trying to tell you, I didn't choose Mark over you. You did. Now I have to live with the idea that I'm your first choice only when your other option is busy. Linda felt shocked. Jim, you are always my first choice. You have been for more than 10 years. One night doesn't change that. One night did change that. Or maybe it just showed the truth. You picked Mark over me every chance you had, from the moment he asked you to dance until he decided he was done with you. How can I show you that's not true? You can't, because it is true. Don't even start with, I didn't really choose, or the choices were already made. You decided to signal Dee to take you to the restroom. You told her to cover for you. And when you left the restroom, you chose to go to Mark instead of away from him. You picked him over me every time. Linda was quiet for a moment. Maybe I just don't want it to be true, she said softly. I don't want to think I'm that kind of woman, even if my friends say it's okay. Which they do, by the way. Dee told me today, but I promise you, that's not how I feel inside. Remember just a week ago when we understood each other so well? What a mess. She shook her head sadly and continued. I know I hurt you badly and I can't change it. But even the worst pain fades over time, doesn't it? This doesn't have to ruin our future, does it? You're right that it will hurt less as time passes, but there's more to this than just that. What you did Friday night changed our marriage forever. It showed me that things I thought I knew about you and our marriage were not true. Basic things, like you always being there for me, or the promises we made to keep things private, or trusting you wouldn't be cruel to me. Since Friday night, all that is gone. It's not true anymore, and it never will be again. So what can I trust in? Linda thought for a moment. Think about our car. You know, the plain family car we picked together? The one we laughed in and cried in and drove on trips. I love our car because it's ours, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But what if, out of nowhere, I had a chance to test drive a fancy car? I never thought about wanting it, but there it was, and all our friends were looking at me. I said yes. I felt excited and drove fast. I enjoyed it. But then I gave the keys back and got back into our car. I loved the experience, but if he offered me money to trade our car for the fancy one, I would have laughed and said no. I wouldn't have regretted it. Yes, I've now driven that fancy car. I had a moment with another man who was very skilled. I enjoyed it, but it's over. I'm back home, and home is where I want to be. So what happens when someone offers you a ride in an even fancier car, or maybe a cool classic car, or maybe offers you a fancy car to keep along with our car so you can have the best of both? Linda shook her head strongly. No, Jim, never. I have everything I want right here. Isn't that what you would have said about the fancy car before Friday night? She sighed but didn't answer. Jim, I haven't changed. I'm still the same me. I know since I came home Saturday you've been looking for something new about me. You haven't found it, have you? And you won't, because it's not me that has changed. It's how you're seeing things. It was just one night in our whole life together. We can't let this break us, Jim. We can't. Please tell me what's making this harder for you than it needs to be. I thought for a moment. You keep saying you haven't changed. But if you're right, then I've been wrong about you for 10 years because I thought you could never do what you did Friday night. If I was wrong about something so basic, what else have I been wrong about? What is left of what I thought I knew about you? You still haven't answered that. The next morning, after a quiet breakfast before I left for work, in the calmest way I could, I said to her, Listen closely, because I'll say this just once. You betrayed me. You were my life, and you humiliated me by treating me badly. I won't forgive you, and I will make you pay for this. I walked out, slamming the door before she could say anything. Later that day, Linda welcomed me in the best way possible. She didn't hint at what I had said, maybe believing it was just a moment of anger and hoping she could make it better. The smell of a nice dinner filled the air, and I saw my lovely wife wearing her blue dress and trying to smile. But her smile showed she was unsure. I couldn't help it. All I could see was my wife, Linda, smiling at another man, and it made my stomach churn. I turned my head away. I noticed her face change. Tears were gathering in her blue eyes. Emma and Tommy were behind her, setting the table and watching us closely. I closed my eyes and pulled Linda close. I felt her trying not to cry in front of the kids. I didn't mean to. I meant, shh, I whispered in her ear. Let's pretend to be a happy couple. Do you want me to change? No, the kids would notice. I'll wash my hands and then we can eat. I held her tight until her breathing calmed down. Thank you, Jim. I love you. I don't know how I made it through dinner, acting as if everything was fine. I didn't win any awards for my performance. Linda wasn't fooled at all. But Emma and Tommy didn't see anything wrong, which was what really mattered to me. As soon as the kids were in bed, Linda started to whimper and talk fast. I tried to calm her. Linda, I understand. You wanted to show me how much you love me and that you haven't changed. The truth is, everything has changed. When I saw you, I thought I saw that man right behind you holding you. I know that's not what you meant, she started to sob again. And it's not what I wanted either, but that's what I saw. She nodded sadly. What happens now, Jim? I really don't know, Linda. For tonight, I'm going to the Willing Mind. I'll be home by 11, is that okay? Okay, Jim. She stood tall and looked me in the eyes. I know this is hard. I'm beginning to see how much I've hurt you. But I believe in you. Tough times bring out the best in you. You might not see a way forward now, but I know you'll find a way for both of us. I love you and I trust you. I sighed as I put on my coat. The man you married isn't here anymore. He disappeared Friday night or Saturday morning. I don't believe that. We may have changed, but deep down, I'm still me, and you're still my hero. She stood there in her lovely blue dress, her blue eyes shining. I smiled a little at her bravery and then walked out. It wasn't fair. She made a choice, even if she said it wasn't really a choice. She had her fun with someone else while I sat alone at home, and now all our friends thought that was okay. My life felt like a mess, and I hadn't done anything to deserve it. And now I was the one who needed to find a way forward. I had told my old friends that I didn't see a reason to stay married to Linda. I still felt the same way. I couldn't imagine being close to her again. It wasn't just the thought of her with another man. Even thinking about our past felt wrong now. Just being around her hurt too much, which is why I spent so much time away at the Willing Mind. I knew I had to make some choices, so I decided to find out about my options for getting a divorce. LW was a family friend who used to know my granddad. He was mostly retired now, but still sharp and wise, ready to help with any family problems. One night after work, I went to see him and told him everything that had happened. The old man paused and shook his head. Has Linda said she's sorry? Well, not really, but I wouldn't expect her to. Right now, she may be sorry you're hurting, but chances are she liked what she did and she wants to keep it that way. I remembered her comments about the car, and I knew he was right. You've probably not watched those tell-all shows on daytime TV. That's okay. Too much of that stuff is bad for your head. But you can learn some things about how women think from them. It's not about what they say, but what they do. Many times, a woman who has an affair or a one-night stand with someone famous gets very proud of it. They may have other good things in their life, but what they boast about is that they were wanted by someone special, even if just for a little while. That's how a husband finds out in the worst way. But for most women, they are happy with their choice, and they don't want to give it up. Something to tell their kids, huh? I said bitterly. No, not their kids, LW chuckled. Their grandkids. They don't want their children to do the same, but they hope their grandchildren know they had a life before. The old man grew serious. You want to know your options for a divorce. They aren't good. She doesn't work, so she'll take half of what you have, and you may have to pay her even more. You would still need to pay for the house, and sadly, even if she cheated, the courts often give the house and the kids to her. I sat there, absorbing what he said. My future felt uncertain, and I knew I had to start thinking about what to do next. Keeping some distance would make their love fade away, and I worried that Linda might turn the kids against me. As your lawyer, I can help you if you want, I said. But as a family friend, I don't think you should. You need to think about what really matters to you. I know it used to be Linda, but now you need something or someone to live for. Find that and let it guide you. Good luck, Jim. I shook his hand and left. He had given me a lot to think about. What did I have to live for? Easy. Emma and Tommy. I would do anything to care for them. I had a clear plan in my mind. A divorce? Yes, but not just yet. I wanted to wait until Emma and Tommy were older so I could explain everything to them and sort out the money issues. Waiting for them to grow up felt too long, but 5 years seemed possible. I planned to wait until they were 9 and 11, then tell them the truth. It would be hard to pretend everything was fine for so long. I would have to act like I forgave Linda. Not all at once. It would have to look real. Little by little, I would show her that I was healing, as if we could return to how we were before, all while pushing down the hurt I felt. I promised myself, through gritted teeth, that I could do it. What about money? Well, I was already on it. I opened an online cryptocurrency account where no one could track it to me. I took out $5,000 from my main account and put it into the crypto account. The plan was simple. Over the next 5 years, I would take out small amounts of money often, but at random times. For each gift, trip, or anything for the kids, I would pretend to spend a bit more than I actually did and deposit the extra back into my own account until the joint account was nearly empty. It would only be left for bills and the mortgage. And what about the house? I had a plan for that, too. Time would tell. The thought that Linda might never feel sorry for what she did with that guy was a hard blow. Did that mean she could do it again with him or someone else? Would she expect me to just accept it because her friends might? Was the only way to have a happy marriage to marry someone not many would want? Linda wanted to talk Sunday night after the kids were asleep. Dee had called. Next week was St. Patrick's Day, and everyone was meeting at Brannigan's for drinks and dancing. It was a school night, but they wanted us to come. "It will be good for you to be with friends, Jim," she said. "You've spent too much time alone, and our friends are worried about you." That's nice of them, but they weren't worried when they helped my wife betray me. That's not fair, Jim. They care about you. You know how much fun you have with them. They just want me to come so they can pretend everything is fine and not feel bad about what they did wrong. Forget it. I'm not going. Okay, I get why you think it might be too soon, but we can't hide away. They are our friends. Then you go. They are your friends now, not mine. I'll take care of the kids if you want to go. No, she answered quickly. I will be wherever you are until you say otherwise. I want to go, but if you aren't going, I won't either. I'll call Dee and tell her. I want to do what it takes to help you through this so we can move forward together. You're stuck with me. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. I couldn't help but respond. Yeah, until... Her smile vanished. Forget it. We've talked about that already. Linda looked at me seriously but kindly. What can I do, Jim? Please tell me. I really mean that. I know you do, but you can't change what you did. I took a deep breath. I saw LW Thursday night. Oh? Where did you run into him? How is he? She smiled, having always liked him. I went to his office. I had a legal question. Linda turned pale. No, she whispered. She began to sob. She fell into me, burying her face in my shirt. She shook all over. I had never seen her so distressed. I never wanted this. Never! I didn't go looking for him or anyone. You know that. You saw it. I would never do that. I love you so much, Jim. You're the only one for me. Please believe me. Don't say I ruined everything. I can't live if I have, I promise. You're the strong one. Please tell me we can fix this. Please give me hope. Please, Jim, please tell me you love me. I sighed. I couldn't see her face, but I could feel her shaking. I felt sad about what we had lost. Still, I couldn't ignore her plea, so I started to follow my plan and lied. I love you, Linda. But all the tears she cried wouldn't take away what she had done. It was always going to be part of us. A few days later, Dee tried to call me at work. I hung up when I knew it was her. A few minutes later, Dave called me. He was upset and wanted to talk about Linda. She's trying to be your friend, he said. Friend. She helped my wife cheat on me. She is no friend of mine. Jim, she's friends with both you and Linda. She wants what we all want, for you to be happy and back to who you were before. You can say that after your wives have cheated on you. I know it's tough, buddy. I know you're hurting and it feels like it won't stop. I understand why you won't come for St. Patrick's Day. We'll miss you, but we get it. No matter what you think, we are your friends, and we want what's best for you. My life became a routine. I went to work, had dinner at home, cleaned the kitchen, spent time with the kids, and then had some quiet time at the Willing Mind. A few times a week, I would take small amounts of money from our shared account and put it into my own. Sometimes I didn't take any money for a week, then I would take out a couple of $1,000s. Nothing too noticeable. One day, Linda asked me to stay home so we could talk about something important. Emma's teacher called me today. She's worried about Emma. What? I said, confused. Pretty much what I said, Linda replied with a small smile. It seems Emma has been acting out at school. One of her friends has parents who are divorced, and Emma has always defended him. Today, she got in a fight to help him. I couldn't help but smile at my brave Emma. Did she win? Jim! Linda scolded, but with a hint of laughter. The teacher thinks something is wrong at home and it's affecting Emma. Smart teacher, I said. She has been teaching for 30 years. She knows what to look for, but it's clear that Emma knows things aren't right between us. We need to do something. I've been trying. I know, but do you think Emma sees that you don't look at me like you used to, that you don't touch me or kiss me anymore? I really miss that. So do I, Linda. I really do. But every time I think about being close to you, I remember how he treated you, and you said he did it better. I feel like no matter what, I can't measure up. I sighed. I guess I should try harder, but it feels like he's always between us. Linda seemed surprised by my frustration. I never said Mark was better than you. Come on, Linda, you did. I have it in writing. No, I said he was more experienced. That's not the same as being better. I enjoyed him for one night, but I don't want that again. I want you. You love me the way I need to be loved. Hearing her words made me want to laugh, but I kept my face neutral. Linda went on, I've thought about this while you were at the Willing Mind. I compare you two because you're the only two men in my life for years, but you always come out on top. Mark may be strong, but I need a partner who can handle life, not just impress me in bed. You understand me better than anyone. I need you, not him. You win every time. I must have looked unsure. Now I know how you feel when you tell me how good-looking I am, she said with a small smile. Please, Jim, look at me. Touch me. Even if it's just for Emma's sake, I promise I'll think of you, not Mark. I looked into Linda's eyes as I reached for her face. It was time for me to change how I felt. I gently touched her cheek with my hand like I used to. Linda smiled softly, her eyes closing. She leaned into my hand, showing me she appreciated the touch. But my long time without closeness made me feel something else, and it embarrassed me, so I pulled my hand back. Linda opened her eyes and smiled at me. See? That hasn't changed at all. It felt just like before, and I've missed it. But after everything I've learned, I'm not sure. Do you know how I feel? She shouted, her eyes flashing with emotion. I don't even know what's true about me anymore. I've always thought I was a good person. But does a good person leave her husband alone to be with someone else? No. Does she buy a nice dress for her husband and wear it for another man? No. Good people keep their promises, right? What does that make me? She took a few deep breaths to calm down and continued. When we got married, I knew I wasn't the prettiest or the smartest, but I promised to stay faithful. That's something I could always give you. I promised myself I would always be a good wife. But now that's gone and it's never coming back. I can't ever say again, I may have let you down, but I was always loyal. Never again. And it's all my fault. Do you think that's easy to accept? She yelled before bursting into tears. Was she starting to feel some pain too? Should I have been kind and comforted her? What she felt was just a tiny bit of what I had gone through, and her path was still long. But I played my part like a good actor. I pulled her into my arms. I'm really sorry, Linda. I never thought about it like that. I don't know why. I paused for a moment. So what do we do now? I asked quietly. There is one thing I do know. I love you, Jim, with all my heart, just like I always have. She seemed calmer now. Her voice was tired, as if that last thought had drained her fully. Her eyes fluttered shut and she leaned against me. I gazed at my soon-to-be ex-wife, who was nearly asleep in my arms. The thought that another man now knew her body as intimately as I did and had made her feel better was really upsetting. Why did it bother me so much that she had been with someone else? Beyond the cheating, which was already a huge deal, it was the hurt that struck me deeply. She hadn't meant to be cruel, but it felt that way. I had never felt so isolated. She had promised me a special night, then taken it away and given it to someone else. She said she would never cheat, but she did. It was as if she had betrayed me in the worst way, but for the sake of our kids, I knew I had to still be loving towards her, or at least pretend to be for a while. Time, despite everything, flies by, and 2 years had already passed. At that moment, Linda was asleep. I looked at her face. It was tired and lined with worry, even in sleep. To love and to cherish from this day forward, in sickness and in health. She had broken those promises, hurting me more than I could ever have imagined. but I was moving forward with my plan. I often spent too much money on gifts for Linda and our kids. One day I surprised her by saying, "What do you think, dear? Shouldn't we replace the old furniture?" "Definitely, Jim. Great idea. I've wanted to change the living room for a long time. But won't we go over budget? Don't worry. I have a plan," I assured her. We took short trips on weekends, and of course, our summer vacation turned into 3 weeks instead of the usual one. Everyone was happy except for our bank account. Meanwhile, my secret account, though slowly, started to look better. Each month, a little of my salary, bonuses, and extra pay added to it. My close relationship with Linda got better, even without sex. I tried not to miss the little touches and loving looks that used to be so common. It was hard. Those gestures should have meant just us, but now it felt different because of the other man, who I hated. I was good at pretending in front of our kids, but not with Linda. She brought it up one Sunday night while we enjoyed a glass of wine after the kids had gone to bed. "Thank you for everything, Jim. I know you're doing this for Emma and Tommy, and it seems to be working, but it helps me too." I noticed she seemed to bloom like a flower getting water. "I appreciate it even more because I can see how hard it is for you. How can I help? Do you still feel him on me? Or in me? Or are you just worried about comparing me to him?" "I think it's both." I nodded. I thought so. She smiled a little. "I believe time will help with the first issue. As we make new memories together, they'll replace the old ones, just like our past loves faded once we were married. We don't forget about them, but they don't come to mind unless we think of them. He will be the same, but it takes time. Does that make sense?" I was troubled inside. How could she think that I could just forget what she did to me? Linda looked down for a moment, then continued. "Well, I see you're worried I'm comparing you. Like I said the other night, I do compare you, and you always win. You may not be perfect, but you are always caring and eager to know what I like, and you do it from love. I was always happy with that. It might be a stretch to call Mark perfect, but he's the best I've had. Nothing I did with him takes away from how I feel about you. You always come first. I choose you, not Mark. I love you, not him. I'll keep saying that until you believe it." I shrugged. "You can say that now because Mark was just a one-time thing. If he or someone like him came along again, how can I know you wouldn't choose him over me again, like you did so easily that night?" "I don't know." Her face looked sad. "And that's the problem. Life moved on, and I even started playing tennis again to keep myself busy. Linda was happy for me to have a distraction. I was in the middle of a game when my phone rang. It was Linda crying hard, "Jim, my mom is gone." I quickly got dressed, even skipping my shower, and rushed home. I held Linda close and tried to comfort her, and luckily the kids were outside. I was shocked when my mother-in-law passed away suddenly. It seemed to come out of nowhere and surprised everyone. The funeral was simple but very emotional. My in-laws were a kind couple who everyone liked, and I truly felt sad for our loss. But for some reason, anger bubbled inside me, maybe because I felt like Linda had let me down and let her parents down too. As I stood next to her, I whispered, "Well, at least she didn't know what kind of person her daughter was. Who knows if your dad will ever find out?" Linda stepped back, looking at me in disbelief. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then she started crying hard. Everyone rushed to comfort her, thinking she was upset about her mother. During the rest of the funeral, we didn't speak again. When we got home, Linda confronted me. "How could you say that? At my mom's funeral, you must have no heart." "You had no thought for me when you were with someone else in front of our friends," I shot back. I quickly realized that wasn't the best thing to say. It was just a moment of anger. "Yes, I'm sorry, I lost my cool, but everything came flooding back to me and—" She turned and ran to another room, and I heard her crying for a long time. I went out to pick up the kids from school, and when we got back, Linda seemed a little better. For a few days afterward, things between us felt cold, but eventually they went back to normal, or what we pretended was normal. I also started playing more tennis. Another St. Patrick's Day came, and once again we spent it at home with the kids, happy and without talking about that difficult time. I still hadn't gotten back in touch with old friends, even though I had promised Linda I would. Then, the next day, I got a phone call from Dave. Last year, our whole group had gone to Brannigan's but didn't like the band, so they went back to Morrison's. And guess who they saw? Are you serious? Yep. He came right over to us and chatted for a while, then he asked where Linda was, by name. Oh, no. Yeah. So Dee said Linda decided to stay home that night. He said he was sorry and that he remembered Linda fondly and wished she could be there. Dee made a joke saying nobody should be sad on St. Patrick's night and asked if anyone could make him feel better. She smiled at him and flirted a bit. I kicked her under the table and she kicked me back even harder. He smiled and said no thanks and walked away. Wow. I asked Dee what she was trying to do, and she said she just wanted to help him forget about Linda because if they got back together, your marriage would be over. I said, "What about you if he gets back with you?" She looked surprised and mentioned how Linda was her best friend. This morning things felt a bit tense at home, so I thought I should let you know. Thanks for telling me, I guess. After a moment, I added, "How are you handling it, knowing your wife might want to see him? It feels different now, doesn't it?" Yeah, it does. But it hasn't happened yet. And he didn't seem interested in Dee, no matter how much she tried. I can promise we're not going back to Morrison's. Thanks for the warning, Dave. Good luck. When I got home that night, Linda held on to me tightly, almost like she was scared. I looked at her and she whispered, "After the kids go to bed." Once the kids were asleep, I felt too anxious for our usual glass of wine, but she insisted on hers. I poured it, and without saying a word, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a plain card with a typewritten note. "Dear Linda, I missed you at Morrison's last night. I hope you're okay. You're a wonderful person, and I think of our dance together and all that came after it very fondly. I'd like to meet up again soon. I'll call you. Sincerely, Mark." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, though my hands were shaking. On the back of the envelope was the name and address of a florist, along with the note, "To Linda from Mark." Where are the flowers? I saw who sent them and almost threw them away, but then I looked. They were so beautiful, and someone put so much effort into growing them that I couldn't just toss them aside. You understand, right? I did. She loved flowers and grew some in our yard every summer. She always felt sad when they wilted. So what did you do? She smiled a little. I noticed the delivery guy wore a wedding ring, so I asked him if he could take the flowers home to his wife. He said, "Unwanted attention, huh? No problem. She'll love these." I gave the flowers to him, and he handed back the card and said, "You should show this to your husband." I hadn't thought of that, but he was right. Should we just burn the card in the fireplace? I thought for a moment. Did he call? No. How could he? I didn't give him my last name or my number. But he has our address. He could find your information easily from that. How did he know where to take you home, by the way? I told him, and he entered it in his GPS. So he knows where you live. He could call when I'm not around. What would happen then? Linda shivered. I don't know, I truly don't want him, but I'm scared. What if Should I just give in to him, like I did last time? The guy didn't waste any time. He left 2 messages on Linda's voicemail the next day before she blocked his number. That night, after the kids were in bed, we listened to them together. "Hi, Linda, it's Mark. I'd really like to see you again. Is this a good number to reach you? Call me back and let's set something up. Hope to see you soon." "Hi, Linda. It's Mark again. Sorry to bother you twice, but I really want to see you again. I think back to our night and the morning after, and I feel like we might have something special. I believe you felt it too. You might think I say this to lots of people, but I don't. I want to know you better. I know you have kids, and I love kids. I'd love to meet yours. I enjoyed our time together last time and want to do it all again, but really, there's something about you that makes me want to be with you as a whole person. I can't explain it, but it's there. I know you're married, but we both know I can give you something your husband can't. You said so yourself. I can provide a life for you and your kids that he could never give you. Linda, don't you think you and your children deserve to see what we could have together? You took the first step before, and you liked it. Take the next step. Please call me." As we listened, I saw many feelings cross Linda's face. She shook her head fast when the guy talked about giving her a better life. "Well," I asked her, "do you think he means it, or is he just trying to get me back?" She replied. "He chose you from a room full of women. The way he says he wants to know you better, not just be with you for one night, is how I felt when I first met you. So yes, I think he might mean it. What will you do now? Linda took a moment to think. Well, it is flattering, I guess. You say those nice things all the time, and I know you mean them. But when someone like Mark says something similar, it feels different. You know, our night together was thrilling. I can't deny it. You've seen the proof. If he was so great and you like his attention, why block him? I kept my voice steady. She answered right away, which showed she had thought this through. It's the cost. I see that cost every time I look at your face, every time you touch me in a way that means so much. I knew coming home to you would hurt you, but I didn't think it would hurt this much or for this long. I didn't realize the cost of just one night would be this high. I also see I've lost parts of myself. I used to value being a faithful wife, but that's no longer true, and it can't be again. I never thought I would trade who I am for just some excitement, but I did. Driving the fancy car was thrilling, I admit, but it cost more than I imagined, and way more than it was worth. Then there's Emma and Tommy. You were right. I didn't think about them and the costs they would pay for my actions, but they are paying too. Today I realized Emma stood up for her friend harder than I stood up for the best parts of myself. I was weak. I need to change now. I will not give up what's left of my self-respect for what Mark thinks is a better life. The next day, Mark tried again. He sent an even bigger bouquet with the delivery man, and the note was even more arrogant. He claimed I made Linda block him because I knew I couldn't compete with him. He wrote that if Linda could honestly say she didn't want what he had to offer, without her husband listening, she should call him and say it. He promised he'd never bother her again. That night, after I got home, Linda played the recording of her call with him. She didn't shout or sound upset. She told him that yes, she liked what they did together. She couldn't deny it. But she was not interested in seeing him again, for any reason, and would never trade one day with her husband for a life with him. He tried to say she didn't mean it, but that was a mistake. I meant exactly what I said, she replied firmly. You have nothing to offer me that I want. I never want to see you, hear from you, or have anything from you again. Now I will hold you to your promise to never contact me again. There was a pause. All right, babe, your loss. Linda sighed when the recording ended. I interrupted her thoughts. Didn't you feel like taking another ride in your fancy car? What a good little wife I have. She looked at me nervously, wondering if I was teasing. But I smiled and kissed her passionately. When I did that, she smiled back at me, and we had a passionate night together. 4 years after that day, it was time to put my next plan into action, to become jobless. Of course, I wasn't stupid enough to quit. The judge would quickly see I was trying to avoid paying alimony. So I decided to talk to the owner of the IT company where I worked. I was skilled and well-liked by my coworkers and the boss. The fact that his brother went through a painful divorce because of a cheating wife also helped my case. He despised women like that. I asked for a meeting and they let me in right away. I shared my whole situation and he felt really sorry for me, but the fix was quite simple. Due to a temporary issue in the industry, there was talk of a small layoff soon. He suggested letting go of those close to retirement and offering everyone a bonus to help them retire comfortably. He would quietly include me in the layoffs without needing to explain anything to anyone, and I wouldn't complain. Plus, after a year, I could easily come back to working, again off the books, which would be good for both me and the company. It wasn't exactly legal, but it would be hard to find out since I could work from home. Only he and I would know about this arrangement. Even if we got caught, it would just lead to a big fine, not a serious problem. When I told Linda, I changed the story a bit. After dinner, when the kids went to watch TV in their rooms, I said to her, I've been thinking of something, dear. Tell me what it is, she replied with interest. The kids are getting older, and before they grow up and leave us, I want to spend more time with them, and with you, too. That sounds nice, but how can we make it happen? Do you have a plan? She asked, a bit surprised. I do, I said, pretending it was just a thought. How about I ask for a year off work without pay, like a break? What do you think? That sounds nice, but how would we manage with money? And will they agree to it? I think it won't be a problem for me to get it. The company has done this for others before, like for women after having babies. As for money, don't worry. Our savings are good enough to support us for a year without my salary. Well, if you think so, Linda said, still a bit unsure. Don't stress. I'll talk to my boss tomorrow and we'll see what happens. Okay, If it works out, it would be wonderful to have more time for ourselves and the kids. Exactly. I'll make sure to convince my boss since I have a good record. In reality, everything was already planned. The next day, I would be out of a job, without any way to pay support if we divorced. I started taking care of my kids full-time. I dropped them off and picked them up from school, helped with homework, and played with them. We had a lot of fun and even went to the movies. I signed them up for swimming lessons and then asked if they'd like to try tennis. They loved coming with me to the club. When Linda asked if they were happy, they replied eagerly, "It's great! There are lots of friends and really good teachers." Besides being their dad, I became their best friend. They felt my love, and I felt theirs. Linda didn't seem to notice that she was slipping away from our bond. Maybe she was just happy that things felt good between us again, with smiles, love, and laughter, as if all the tough times in our marriage had been wiped away. About 3 months into my break, after an intimate moment with Linda, I casually said, "You know, at the tennis club yesterday, I spoke to a real estate agent who had a great idea to make some easy money." "Easy money?" She smiled. "Nobody gives away money for free." "I know that," I said, "but there's a way for us to get some money while I wait to go back to work." "It won't be illegal, will it?" she asked, looking concerned. "Of course not. You know me. I'd never do anything wrong." "Unlike some people," I said, hinting at her. I regretted that comment as soon as I said it, but thankfully she didn't react. "So what's the idea?" "The agent said we could sell our house without really selling it." "What do you mean by that?" she asked, sounding confused. "There's a way we can keep living in our house while getting money for it. It's called bare ownership. This means we give up ownership, but we can stay until we're no longer here. The house would sell for less than its value, but as long as we live here, it will still be ours. What do you think?" He said he can handle all the paperwork and finds buyers quickly. Linda looked unsure, but didn't want to ruin my plans. She had a lot to make up for, and she knew it. "But what if we get kicked out later?" she wondered. "Not a chance. It will all be in writing. As long as the two of us live in this house, it will still be ours in every way." I didn't have to work hard to convince her, and there really was a real estate agent at the tennis club. I spoke to him, and he had a great agency. In just a month, he found a couple who wanted to buy the house using our plan. The signing of the papers in front of the notary was just a formal step. A part of the money from the deal went into my secret account. The rest was slowly spent on dinners, new gadgets, and expensive vacations. By the end of the year, our account was nearly empty. Tommy and Emma were now 9 and 11 years old. They were still young, but old enough to understand the difficult truth about their mother. The time had come when everything would come to light. Linda's birthday was coming up, and about 10 days before it, as we sat together on the couch, I said, "Your birthday is soon." "Yes, time flies," she replied. "This year I can't surprise you like usual, but I have to tell you what your gift is." "Why? What is it?" she asked with a big smile, looking forward to my answer. "I have booked a week-long cruise to Miami and the Bahamas. You should start packing because we leave in 3 days." "No way!" she shouted, jumping up to hug and kiss me. "But can we afford it?" "Of course, I've planned everything. Emma and Tommy will have a week-long tennis camp at the Federal Center, and they will love it while we enjoy our vacation." "That's amazing! I have always wanted to go on a cruise since I was a girl. This is the best gift, thank you," she said, kissing me sweetly. When we pulled apart, I continued, "That's not all, my dear. I thought it would be nice for us to reconnect with our friends. I've planned a dinner dance for the night we return. Can you let them know?" Before she could respond, I added, "And we won't be at Morrison's." A quick look of sadness crossed Linda's face, but it quickly turned to joy. She thanked me, saying, "You're wonderful, honey. I hoped you would reach this point. I'm so happy. I'll call them right away." The cruise was great. We spent our days on the beach and enjoyed dinners and shows on the ship. When we had the energy, we had some intimate moments together. The week passed in a flash, and when we got back, we had dinner planned with our friends. The place I chose had a few rooms on the first floor, mostly used by couples after dancing. I booked one, not for the night, but so we could freshen up after our trip. Linda went first to shower and change, and then I took my turn in the shower. When I came out, I saw her. She was wearing a lovely red dress. It was one of my favorites and looked great on her. With her best smile, she looked attractive, but for some reason I felt different. Some small wrinkles were showing, and her shiny eyes, which used to thrill me, now did not. Still, I had to give her a compliment. "You look amazing, honey. A real sight to see." "I can't kiss you or I'll mess up my makeup, but I'd love to," she replied. "I'll make it up to you tonight after the dance," she said with a wink. I got changed too, and we went down the hall holding hands. Soon after, our friends Dee, Dave, Phil, and Jane arrived, almost all at once, followed by 2 more couples. In total, there were 10 of us. We greeted each other warmly, especially them with me, and sat down for dinner. The food was good, and once we got over the initial awkwardness, the conversation flowed easily. Everyone had a lot to share about what happened over the long break. After dinner, we headed to the dance floor. It was a bit awkward at first, with Linda making it clear through her actions that she belonged to me. Sadly, a voice in my head reminded me that things were different that night. Many men asked her to dance, but she turned them all down. After a few dances, we sat back at our table when a girl walked into the room. We noticed her because many heads turned to look. She was a beautiful blonde girl, elegant yet simple. She had a well-shaped body, clearly athletic, and her friendly face was simple but lovely, with cute dimples and some intriguing freckles that made her even more interesting. Her bright smile and beautiful eyes were striking. She wore a stunning blue dress. It's like my dress," Linda said, her eyes wide in surprise. "It's not the same, but it looks even better on her than on you, doesn't it?" I said to her. Before anyone at the table could respond to my rude comment about Linda, something unexpected happened. The pretty girl came to our table and, with a cheerful smile, asked, "Can I have a dance with you?" "Of course, right, dear," I said, looking at my wife with a smirk. I got up, took the girl's hand, and we walked to the dance floor, joining the crowd. "What's going on?" Dee asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. Linda looked stunned, and her once happy face began to show signs of worry. "I don't know what's happening. Is he really thinking about that day? Does he want to get back at me after all this time? Is that possible after 5 years?" Her forehead was wrinkled, and a tear started to form in her eye. "If that's true, I deserve it. I can handle this shame. If this has to end everything, I'll accept that." After 2 dances, which felt like forever to our friends, we walked back to the table. I turned to everyone and gave Linda a little extra look. Then I started, "Let me introduce Ellen. She's my tennis partner and also the teacher for Emma and Tommy." I paused, then added, "She has also been my partner for a year, and we will be getting married as soon as the divorce is done." I had met Ellen during the kids' tennis class, and we had connected right away. After a few months, I had shared everything with her. She was upset with how Linda treated me, feeling the same way I did about the betrayal. She agreed to help me get back at Linda. She even accepted that I would still need to see my wife from time to keep up the act of a happy marriage. Everyone was shocked, with their eyes wide and mouths open, unable to speak. "Divorce?" Linda stammered, looking amazed. "What divorce? You were with someone else for a year? How could you?" "Cheated? Don't make me laugh, Linda. You are the one who cheated on me 5 years ago. You left me for Mark, and that's when my marriage ended. The papers will just make it official," I said, smiling at her, taking a yellow envelope from my pocket. I put it on the table and continued. "You are served. Here are the divorce papers. Whether you sign them or not, it's happening. I suggest you sign them to make this easier. You will get half of our joint account, which is a total of $10,217. "What? What about the rest?" Linda managed to say. "What rest? For years, we mainly used our accounts to pay bills and for the kids. You didn't notice? Now let me finish, please." "No, no!" Linda cried, kneeling before me. "Please, I don't want to get divorced. Don't throw me away." "You were the one who threw me away 5 years ago. You should have thought about that day." "No. You haven't forgotten that mistake of mine, have you?" "Mistake? It wasn't a mistake. You made a choice. Remember when I said I would make you pay? You should have trusted my words, as I trusted you. I guess I trusted the wrong person." Finally, I could let out the anger I had kept inside for 5 long years. "For alimony, don't count on it. I've been out of work for a year." "What? You got fired? You told me you'd take a break? I said that so you wouldn't worry, I replied, smirking. I'm actually jobless. And the house? It was sold yesterday. The new owners are moving in and all our things are in a storage unit. You will find the address and keys in the envelope too. New owners? Linda looked stunned and upset. Yes, don't you remember selling it? But it was supposed to be ours as long as we lived there, Linda stuttered. That's true, but I moved out a week ago. I'm living with Ellen now. The contract says the house belongs to us as long as we both live there. Since I moved out, it's not ours anymore. Linda looked crushed. She had no home, little money, and no job or alimony. How was she going to cope? Please, Jim, what will I do? You've never forgiven me, have you? No, I haven't. And how I live after this isn't my problem. Maybe you can ask your beloved Mark for help since you chose him. Betrayal? Yes, but it's more than that. I might have forgave him, but the way you treated me made me stop loving you. How can I love someone who treated me like dirt in front of others, not caring for my pain or our kids? You wanted to show off being with Mr. Lavalier instead of thinking about anyone else's feelings. And you let him pick you up in a big car, showing off to everyone? You kissed him in public. You wanted everyone to know you were with him, didn't you? Making me look like a fool? No, it wasn't like that. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. He couldn't find money where there was none. The house sale agreement was legal. I had never taken out any strange amounts of money from our account. We were both out of work, so there was no way for her to ask for support. As for the kids, without a home and with her letter admitting to her cheating and shaming me, Linda had lost. The kids were given to me because I could take care of them in my partner's house. After 3 months, the divorce was final. Linda had a serious mental breakdown and stayed in the hospital for 2 months. I made sure not to tell Emma and Tommy anything about what was happening. It was better for them not to know. When Linda came to see the kids, which the judge allowed her to do, it never went well. Emma and Tommy always screamed and cried, trying to push her away. They would shut themselves in their room, refusing to come out as long as Linda was there. The anger the kids felt toward her and the distance between them hurt Linda deeply. Sometimes a social worker came with her, but all they could do was watch the same sad scenes. After a few months of trying to see them, Linda finally stopped coming to the house at all. It took about 2 years for Emma and Tommy to mostly forget about Linda. By then, their mother was Ellen, who loved them like her own, and they felt the same way. Linda never fully got better. I found out she stayed with friends for a while because her father had cut ties with her after he read my letter explaining the divorce. Her friend Dee had her own issues, and Linda lost her job too. For a time, she worked as a waitress, but her mental struggles made it hard for her to handle customers, and she was let go. I heard that she ended up living on the streets. I don't know how long she could keep that up because older women in that situation struggle to get by. Was I being too harsh? I don't think so. I had been kind before, but she had treated me poorly and made me feel worthless. I had every reason to feel upset. I believe that people who do wrong should face the consequences. Those who betray and hurt others cause lasting damage, and they don't think about the pain they cause. Such a person is hard to forgive and causes harm to everyone around them. I wanted to get back at my ex-wife, but I knew I had to wait. There's an old saying that says, "Revenge is a dish best served cold," and I kept that in mind. Luckily, I believe not all women are like Linda. I'm sure my wonderful new partner, who stood by me even when I was close to my ex-wife for so long, is truly good. A happy life together is ahead for us. February seems tough? Maybe not so much after all. Hey, audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.